Welcome. It has just gone 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, the 30th of April, and you are watching episode 169 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap providing insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode
is Dr. Daniel Collins. I'm the
uh,
candidate for Leichhardt.
is my guest, Dr. Daniel Collins, ecologist and the Australia Party candidate for Leichhardt. Daniels has an honours degree in environmental science and a PhD in forest science and land management. He is the founder of core culture concept and has long believed in the need to make the natural systems of the earth the foundations of our living and agricultural production systems. Daniel is adamant that humans have an essential role to play in the management of our deserts, grasslands, forests, and waterways to ensure a sustainable, improved, mutually productive natural and agricultural environment. Daniel has worked the land, built businesses, and seen firsthand the opportunities going to waste in North Queensland. From Cairns to the Straits, he knows what is broken and how to fix it. He is a qualified ecologist, long experienced in forest science and land management. He is no stranger to balancing industry with the environment to support both the economic growth and environmental sustainability. Daniel is also the chairman of the African Refugee Council, scientific manager for the Amazon Rainforest Conservatory, and a private investigator for wildlife and environmental issues. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, mate. Thank you very much, Bill. Great introduction.
I'd like to thank you for coming on and getting a bit of time on here because I know you're busy with the election. But if we could start off and give us a bit of background about your misspent youth, maybe, and then your pathway to your the career that you chose, and then maybe just touch on to why you decided to become a candidate in this federal election.
Oh, look, I've got ancestors that were living and working in the rainforests on the east coast of Australia, going back many, many generations. In fact, I traced it all the way back to the 1700s, and one lad by the name of Henry Collins in Tasmania in the bush in the early 1800s. But essentially, I grew up in a lot of the rainforest areas along the east coast. I spent a lot of time through my childhood, especially here in North Queensland, just living in the bush, hunting, fishing, enjoying the rainforest and the tall eucalypt forests for what they are. And I naturally just became really close to those environments. And then when I was about 17, 18, I decided time to study properly in this. And I wandered into James Cook University, and it's a very different world from the rainforest. There's all these rich students and so forth. And there I was just wandering out of the rainforest. So that was interesting. But I powered through it despite, quite frankly, a lot of socio-economic discrimination, especially from the leftists in the university. Absolutely, they thought that they were something wonderful. But I powered on and just ended up doing honours in the gaps in the rainforest here in North Queensland, in the Daintree and down behind Innisfail and Babinda there. And I focused in on plants that regenerate after cyclones and after tree falls, especially the wait-a-while vines, which we know now are actually highly marketable for cane furniture. So it just went on, and I travelled in New Guinea and Borneo, helping with conservation of the rainforest throughout Sumatra and then all through Indochina. Came back and decided to do the PhD after Cyclone Yasi, straight after Cyclone Yasi. So it was a PhD on the regeneration of the rainforest. So it was really amazing. And then after the PhD, I headed off to the Amazon to set up a lot of reserves there, Brazil, Peru and other countries. And at the moment, the group I'm involved with, we've protected 320,000 hectares in the most biodiverse spot in southeastern Peru on the border of Peru, Bolivia and Brazil. So And then I come back to Australia and I realised, my God, we're just not thinking sustainably enough. I mean, in South America and other countries where there are tropical rainforests, a lot of the reserves involve the harvest of some timber, but also non-timber forest products like Brazil nuts, rubber, the cane furniture cane. And I sort of saw just how extreme the leftist movement is here now in Australia. It's gone too far, and that's why I decided to run.
I think
So,
it's strange to a lot of people is if you're for the environment and conservation and regeneration and all that, how do you fit into agriculture and growth and development in these areas? Because to most people, especially those people in the city, it's fairly foreign in regards to uh, the bush, the forest, the rainforest in particular. They're just there and no human involvement, just pull all humans out of it and that's it. That's their method of conservation is just lock it and leave it. But that's not really the best for the natural environment, not to have some management system in it, because we've seen from things in regards to, if you go back to the United States, hello, Cat.
can't get enough of me, this guy.
If you
Righto,
go to the
go away.
United States,
Oh,
which
mate, he's a bit of a star. He has actually talks a bit almost like a human. He's got these funny little voice, this bloke. Come on, turn it on, will you? No, he doesn't want to talk.
yeah.
Really
But
weird. It's almost human-like, his little voice.
because it's
Anyway, yeah,
interesting,
keep going.
interesting in the United States, because you can go back to the days of Woodrow Wilson, and they actually started the conservation system there. Because I think it came from I started off with Roosevelt and the national parks
Yeah,
and that,
that's
but then
right.
it
The
just
Conservation
then it
Corps.
just went on and
That's what
that.
we need here. That's what we need here.
But Woodrow Wilson went further and started changing things like the access and the forestry and things like that. So we've got the one, probably the most prime example is the Californian redwoods. They were probably the first big forests that started to get locked up, 80 odd years or more ago. And we're now seeing the
All
devastation
sorts of problems. Yeah.
from having old forests without regrowth.
Yep. You got it, mate. Like even the native people. Look, the fact of the matter is they weren't dancing around like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. I mean, people need to, and I think the people in the cities don't realize that. They harvested just pretty much everything was used for something, and pretty much everything was on the menu. And I think people just need to realize that. I mean, big trees, like here in North Queensland in New Guinea, there's a tree called Saiba, and it is hollow inside. So it's been harvested for the people in New Guinea for thousands of years, and here in North Queensland as a canoe tree. And it's a massive tree in the rainforest. And it just goes on and on. I mean, they even ring barked certain trees here, the Aboriginals, in the rainforest for the growth of witchetty grubs that grow in the candle nut tree. And believe it or not, that tree also produces an edible nut. So there was no limit to how they got stuck into stuff. And I think people just need to realize that. And it's the same in the Amazon, it's the same in Borneo, everywhere I've been. And the thing that people need to realize about the tropical rainforest, it regenerates like no other environment. Okay, that's what really came out of my PhD. What we saw after Cyclone Yasi, and we're talking about 90% destruction in most of the places where my plots were, it came back like you would not believe. And we now have seen, I've been there in Brazil and other places in South America, reserves that have been set up that was severely logged 20 or 30 years ago. They're back to normal and they have all the biodiversity that they ever had. It only took about 20 years for these places to recover. So I think people just don't understand that the tropical rainforest, if we all walked out of Cairns now, in 20 years, there'd be a closed canopy, and if you flew over it, you wouldn't even know. I mean, there might be some taller buildings that'd be sticking out, but the jungle, mate, let me tell you, it will take over in the end when we're all gone, okay? And I think the people in the city, they just don't understand. They're fed all this extreme crap, leftist woke crap. I've lived for decades actually in the rainforest, and I can tell you, when we're all gone, it's going to return, okay, very quickly.
Well, the thing is, most people up here even know in Cairns with the garden, if you don't pay attention to it, it's not too long before you're overgrown. And I think one of the biggest things is fortunately we have a quarterly free green waste disposal. So when that comes around, uh, every 3 months, but I've got to admit it's usually the first one in April. That's a real big one after the wet season growth and thickness and that. And I'm usually taking away. I mean, I've only got a suburban block, but I've got a bit of a spare block at the side with a few trees and things like that. But I'll take anything up to 5 utility loads to the tip because everything grows
Absolutely.
that much. I've got to prune and that. So and another thing we're really good on, and as city dwellers, is using the old Roundup sort of thing because the
Right.
weeds get out of control, and they worry about the farmers using a bit of pesticide and a bit of whatever, and weed killer or whatever. But gee, I reckon we would have in the Cairns City and that. I reckon it'd be interesting
Oh,
to see how many liters or that Bunnings sells of Roundup and that, and how much we
no,
pour into the system.
it's unreal, man. Like I don't use any chemicals at all. This is the thing. Like I believe we can set up agroforestry systems with the right plant combinations, and I've done many trials on all sorts of agroforestry crops like vanilla and other stuff. You don't need to use any chemicals. If we go with ecoforestry, as I explained before in Brazil and South America and other places, and agroforestry, where we actually plant valuable timbers with crops that are compatible with them, we're not going to need any chemicals. And this is what all these extreme leftists need to realize. Their mindset is it's just too extreme. They've
I, I
lost it.
think I think the difference is in a suburban situation, we have a lot more clear areas and exposed to a lot of sunlight. So anything that drops on the ground starts growing
Oh,
straight
no, no.
away. And
Yeah.
weeds are fairly prevalent. But if you've got a big forest environment where you've got canopies and that, a lot of this stuff doesn't get a hold anyway.
Yeah.
And that brings me to another point, with even non-rainforest, but if you go to Southwest Australia or Western
Yep.
Australia,
Yeah. I've been into
we've
the
had
forest there.
Tarragon and
Yep.
Jarrah forests operating
Yep.
down there for 150 years, and they've eventually locked it all up now.
I know. They locked that up as well.
But the thing is, if you went into some of those areas that had been logged, 30 or 40 years ago, you would not be able to tell the difference between that and a piece that hasn't been logged, unless
That's
you're
pretty right, mate.
animals.
It's pretty right. You're damn right. It doesn't take long,
And,
you know,
and the other
few
thing is,
decades and that's it. You know,
forest
and
the
sorry.
forestry management system, like a lot of say, oh, well, you're cutting down the trees and you're killing the koalas and all the. I don't know from just a small West Australian experience because my father was in the forestry as a young man and that. Um, I'm not aware of any species in West Australia that was made extinct by forestry. I'd
Nothing.
be really interested to see how
I'm not
many
aware of any that have
species.
been made extinct either. Yeah, you're right. And I'm not aware of any that have been made extinct in the North Queensland rainforest by forestry.
And
Like
it's,
people need
yeah.
to realize that. You're
And you
damn right.
actually, if you talk to a lot of the people from the forestry system who went through universities, so probably the 70s, late 70s and that, who have got tons of experience in that, Vic Jurgis, there's a whole heap of them in that. And they'll tell you in a lot of cases, it was the logging that actually helped a lot of the wildlife flourish because one thing that they love is new forest. The
Yeah.
koalas don't like the old bloody gum trees that are 60, 70 years old and their bloody leaves bloody 100 meters up in there. They just love those new saplings and things like that. So we've actually created a lot of this environment that's been good for the wildlife.
Oh, it's a well-known scientific fact. the intermediate disturbance hypothesis, and it shows that a bit of disturbance, they've used the term intermediate, actually leads to higher biodiversity. And the tropical rainforest is a classic example. And look, the reality is that all of the forests in Australia, the first form of conservation that they were given, the first line that was put around them and said, leave that as forest, was created in all cases, all across the country, from the southwest of Western Australia. It was put in, the first conservation areas were put in place by forestry. They are the ones that said, we're leaving that part alone as forest. And it's the same here in North Queensland, this whole wet tropics World Heritage Area. It was first set aside in 1920 by a forester by the name of Swain. And he went around and actually said, righto, we better put a line here, because the dairy farmers were clearing and other people were clearing. And they realised it was time to designate the boundary of where the forest would be. And that was the Forestry Department, what's better known now as the Queensland Forest Service. They were the ones who set this rainforest aside, not the conservationists, not the Wet Tropics World Heritage Area, not the Wilderness Society, not the Friends of the Earth and UNESCO or any of these other people. It was the foresters who set this rainforest area in the wet tropics in North Queensland aside. And that's a fact. In
But
1920,
not only that, they also
over
left
100
enough.
years ago.
They also left enough for a sustainable industry as well. It wasn't a matter of just completely locking up. And there's also need to evaluate each individual area in regards to its intrinsic value. I mean, it's very important to keep pristine and key parts, exactly as they were, sort of thing. But other places obviously can be managed.
Oh, yeah.
And harvested and utilised as well.
Yeah, they had, where they knew there was special plants, because there are a lot of rare plants that are special in the evolutionary history of Australia and the world. They had what they called scientific reserves within the state forest. So they were aware, okay, that certain areas, it was best to put a special protected area around them. And there were also places that got designated as part of, they were called state forest. That's what the Forestry Department is names their land areas. So there were some areas that had very little forest at all, near nothing, right? There was just cattle were wandering into, goats, horses. And those places today are full-on jungle, okay? And they were given no help to regenerate by the Forest Service. They just let it go. Today, you go there and it is full-on tropical rainforest. A classic example is Wongabel State Forest. It's about 100 years growth. You wouldn't even know that there was nothing there 100 years ago. So the reality is that Wongabel State Forest on the Atherton Tableland has all the red cedars. It has everything, all the animals. So, and that was without any human help at all to regenerate. And it had all sorts of feral animals running over it. And the jungle won in the end, easily. So I think far out, people just have no idea about just how resilient tropical rainforests are.
The other thing is we had people on the ground with all the experience and providing the advice. That's been taken away over the last generation or so, where all those homegrown experts and the people who had 20, 30 years experience in the area.
Yeah, good point.
And they had, they were in the research stations, all those sort of things, and they were providing guidance for the people who make policy. They're gone now, and the policy comes out of concrete buildings down in Brisbane or Sydney or even Canberra, of people who have not actually engaged in the work on the land. So we've got the situation now that people are making the policies not based on real life experience, just on maybe a bit of lectures at the university, some textbooks and that's the way to go.
Oh, absolutely, mate. The Department of Natural Resources and all those groups whatever they call themselves now, EPA, National Parks and Wildlife Service. It's just full of people with no real experience out in the rainforest or these tropical woodlands and tall eucalypt forests. So many of them are there because of who they know, who they're related to, because their mummy and daddy was able to send them to a really good school and university. And the number one thing that gets you a job in those departments now is being woke, being extreme left and absolutely like blind to it. And it's just infested these departments to the point where it's just a woke wonderland. It's like, it's unbelievable. And now common sense is gone. I mean, I can give you so many examples of mismanagement by the national parks and the Wet Tropics Management Authority here in North Queensland. Like, it's unbelievable, man. Like fire burning off that got out of control and burnt right through rainforest areas. It just goes on and on. There are just, and I'm seeing people getting jobs in these departments. Then they've never been here. They're applying from Brisbane or Sydney, but because they know someone or their uncle or their auntie is in the national parks, all of a sudden, bingo, they're here. It's ridiculous,
they've got that piece of paper.
It's ridiculous, man. It's all nepotism and corruption. It's just rotten to the core. And anybody says a damn thing, well, maybe we should do, anything you say that's not fully in line with their extreme left stuff, well, guess what? They all just automatically, they either don't want to associate with that person or they all just try and push that person out. It is disgusting, man. Like, it is so rotten. I'm not joking, mate. It is rotten to the core now. It's really sad, yeah. All common sense is gone. And they'll do things that they think is good management. Oh, we've got to bulldoze this track. And I was just up in the Goldsboro Valley on the weekend and they're redoing this road and some of the little drain out spots, you can see the mud and the pile up of dirt. It's all going to end up in the river. The siltation is from this, the way, I mean, these people are just managing it to keep their jobs. That's it. That's all they're interested in. And what's actually going on the ground is hopeless, man. It's bloody hopeless. There are so many really good sites now because a big wind blew through and knocked over a fence or something, and it takes them forever to fix up that walking track again. And all this stuff where you're not allowed to light a fire. And what about the camping areas where you have to take your garbage out and like the Palmerston Highway is a stone's throw away? They're so useless. It is, they do not provide for visitors to this area like the forestry department did. They really did give you the chance to experience the bush. Now, like I said, there are some camping areas where you're expected to take the garbage bins aren't even there. They've taken them away. It just doesn't make any sense, man, It's so corrupt. It's a mess.
The other thing is too, I mean, the forest basically is a state issue and driven by them in the most part, although the federal government with its environmental protection overlay does play a big influence on it. But this push to acquire more land under the protected areas, estates, just general plans to assist with buying out, lock it and leave it sort of thing. The problem I see with that is the more area you give to the government, it's just more area that will never be funded to be managed properly because
exactly.
they don't manage what they've got.
They've already got, yeah.
And they want to close up more and just lock it and leave it. And locking it, leaving it, when you already got feral animals and exotic plants already in the area, if you just lock it and leave it, well, that just gives them a head start.
Oh, man. It's kind of like when they brought in the Wet Tropics World Heritage Area between Townsville and Cooktown, they said, oh, you can't hunt anymore. And they meant you can't hunt anything, right? Not even a cane toad. Well, guess what? We now have something like 30,000 pigs running around in the rainforest just in that area, infesting, digging everything up, spreading meningitis. It just goes tuberculosis, fouling water holes, and then they bring in these stupid baiting programs that they think they can poison them out, which is not what we need laying around in the jungle. There's only one way to sort this, to manage these feral animals, is to let people hunt there again and literally blow them away, man. Let people hunt, have it organized so we know where people are hunting at what time, but allow people to hunt with guns, bows, whatever, and that will bring these feral animals under control. Ever since they stopped the hunting, I mean, there's pigs everywhere. You see families of pigs every time you go in the jungle now. And you can see
them
in
the jungle.
everywhere.
They're coming out of the jungle into
Yeah,
the cane fields. They're actually coming
everywhere.
into the suburbs, like in the
Yeah,
northern beaches and that.
it's true.
If you're not controlling them, they just keep growing and expanding their operation. So this
Absolutely.
is wrong. But the other thing is, with hunters and that, guess what? It's not going to cost the government a dime because these
Exactly,
people do
man.
it off their own back.
Oh, God, it's like so obvious. But you've got people sitting in the wet tropics going, oh, no, we can't have the sound of those people there. And all of these people come out with these extreme ideas. They don't come from here. They've got no ancestral link at all. They're usually from down in Lismore or Mullaney or one of these hippie joints. It is so ridiculous. I can't even put it into words, mate. Like we have a serious woke problem in North Queensland.
But it's also like we used to have conservationists, tree huggers, and that we call them, and they had some legitimate complaints going back some time ago. Fair enough, and we have to get better at what we're doing. But the thing is now that they advocate for locking up the rainforest and that. But these same people who sort of stop a farmer from cutting back regrowth, regeneration, and just about any other activity can quite happily stand by while you just cut the top of mountain ranges off to put up
windmills.
So
I've been up there and had a look. It's
how
so
hypocritical
disgusting.
can you get?
Oh, mate, they are a serious problem. And like I told you before, man, I've lived for decades in the jungle. These people that are calling themselves conservationists now have no idea. When you actually live in the rainforest like I have, you really, as long as I have, off the rainforest. I had gardens as well, but I hunted, fished, I ate bush foods, used medicines. I was so connected to the rainforest. This stuff that you see now called woke is a load of crap. Those people have no idea. They haven't got a clue. And it's going to do so much damage to this country. They're off with the fairies. Most of them are driving around in big diesel four-wheel drives, and their houses are made from red cedar. And, it's so ridiculous. They're a pack of hypocrites, and it's time for Aussies to wake up. And that windmill situation, the stuff they're planning, they're done on the tablelands already. Absolutely disgusting. Those people, if we were to do that, they would be getting the EPA and trying to put us in jail and wipe us out. They'd be fining us millions of dollars. But strangely, the left is allowed to just go in and bulldoze whatever they want to put up their woke, renewable energy systems. They're a pack of hypocrites.
Okay, then you're going obviously for the seat of Leichhardt, which is basically a good part of northern Queensland, of course, far north Queensland. It's quite interesting. This year is the 10th anniversary of the Abbott government's white paper on northern development. Now, the idea of northern development was in part to improve the economy for northern Australia, create more job opportunities, allow Indigenous people to get engaged with the economy and developing that. I haven't seen anything like that come to fruition.
That's right.
There doesn't seem to be a great plan for advancing even agriculture in the far north. So with you going forward, how do we manage to sort of at least keep the population that we have got at the moment and then make it grow? And what industries can we use to make especially the Cape area, a bit more developed and prosperous for all Australians?
Oh, mate, it is limitless. That's my answer to that. I could sit here for the next 2 weeks and tell you about this. So I'm going to try and break it down to some key core stuff. I mean, actually, most of the Cape is tropical woodland or eucalyptus forest, and there are a number of highly useful and valuable construction timbers, hardwoods in those forests. It's been proven by people like Mark Annandale and others that have done research on these other foresters that have researched it, that it's easily sustainable to be harvesting a number of those species in a sustainable yield selective forestry manner. Darwin Strigivark is one of them. Red mahogany, a magnificent timber with thousands and thousands of cubic meter, worth thousands and thousands of dollars a cubic meter. There's also forest red gum, absolutely beautiful timber. We should have a sustainable timber industry throughout the Cape, harvesting those and others from the tropical woodlands, the eucalyptus open forests. And we can also not only provide so many jobs for Aboriginal people and others living up there in that timber industry, but we can also the state could use a lot of that timber or some of that timber to solve the housing crisis. We could be building, why do we have to build block houses that are all mansions worth $500,000 or $1 million? We could be building the kind of houses that are still there in Kansas City that have survived for over 100 years, survived God knows how many cyclones, that are built from these timbers. We could be building these in a housing system here that would solve the housing problem so much cheaper and so much faster than all these other ideas that are going around. So we can kill a lot of birds with one stone with what we've got on the Cape. And in the rainforest, for example, there is cane that is used for furniture all around the world. It's in the genus Calamus. And we have a number of marketable species, really good species of this, growing in North Queensland and up to Cape York. But when I spoke to some scientists around other, the so-called expert conservationists, they were absolutely telling me there's no way you're touching it. I mean, we're talking about a plant that is now infesting the rainforest to the point where there are places you can't even walk anymore because the calamus vines have just taken over so much. Go for a walk at Babinda Boulders behind Babinda and you'll see it there. It's a huge industry we're doing nothing with. Around the world, it's worth about $50 billion a year, and that's before you really get into the whole furniture trade. We are loaded with it, and we are doing nothing. I mean, the money we could make just from the cane would be more than what we spend on Aboriginal funding around this country every year. We could pay for all of that with this plant that grows back so fast. It is one of the most, it is actually the most destructive plant in the rainforest, and it's a native plant. It wouldn't matter. You could harvest that thing constantly for the next 100 years and you wouldn't damage its sustainability. It could easily be harvested sustainably. And I actually studied it in my honours and looked at that. There's absolutely no doubt about it. We could have a furniture cane industry here. And I mean, it just goes on and on, mate. We could go into the agroforestry systems we could set up here on land that's already damaged. We have the best climate and land in Australia for all the best tropical timbers, and we're doing nothing. All that's happening is a few people are planting some radiata pine. I mean, seriously. It just goes on and on. There could also be a community forestry program where we teach landowners how to grow certain timbers and the crops that can be grown with it. Like vanilla, for example. I've actually been involved with a trial that showed very clearly that vanilla loves growing up our native red mahogany tree, which is a highly valuable timber. There's a system that we could be teaching landowners all across Cape. The Aboriginal people could be getting into that. What about balsa wood? Absolutely perfect, Cape York, for growing that. You harvest it in 4 or 5 years. It just goes on, and for some reason, there's basically nothing being done to look at these industries. It's I just
that's the
find it
problem.
amazing that no one's looking at this,
But, but
because the reason is this extreme woke crap that's going on.
but it's basically because all the decision making is made in Sydney, Brisbane, Canberra,
Yeah,
Melbourne.
yep,
People completely devoid of any knowledge of the rural environment and that. But the other thing that interests me is regards to I think we've got 29 million hectares of native forest in Australia. I think Finland's got something down in about the 20 million, but it makes and has made about 10 times more wealth from its forest than
exactly.
we do. Even when we were foresting, properly. And the other thing about it is that's in a climate that's really
Yeah,
cold
it's not the
and
world's
not really
greatest climate
conducive to
for it.
fast-growing trees. Uh,
Exactly.
So we've got this big advantage. We've got plenty of land. We've got an environment that's conducive to fast-growing plants. And the other thing that's very, very different with Finland, so many of their forests are multi-owned. In other words, they're owned by just, it might be just a couple in the superannuation fund, and they might just own this plot and they manage it, and they obviously don't harvest it because what they do is obviously there's all sort of contractors and mills that come and do
Yeah.
it. But there's not only the state or the national government sort of forestry companies and stuff, but there's tons of private, lots of superannuation funds, and a lot of individuals, just family business. And I think it's something around about 60,000 different operators
Yeah,
on that in
it's
their forest. Now,
unreal.
and they all
So
make a
much for
living out
everyone.
of it,
Yeah,
and they make big exports from it.
absolutely, man. And you know what? One of the best places in the world for doing this is actually North Queensland, because it's a safer place than most of the world's tropical areas that have this environment. I mean, here we can grow the whole lot. The Asian rosewood, the Brazilian mahogany. We can grow the whole damn lot here, man, and we're doing nothing with it. And yet it's so politically stable, even though we've got some pretty extreme leftists in charge. We're still like, it's not a dangerous place like the other wet tropical areas of the world that can get a bit dodgy. This is perfect here. And there's so much that could be done in this field, and we're doing nothing. I think, man, it's
Yeah, the other
it
thing
just
is
leaves me in
we've
amazement,
also
man.
got good oversight anyway. Like in some of those other countries, they haven't got real good oversight in that, but we do have good oversight. So it's always going to be sustainable. Anyone who's going to do the wrong things gets chopped. But one of the things I noticed, last time I went up the Cape was probably about 2017, up the development road, and it's still being developed, mind you.
It's the longest development road in history, hey.
But one of the things I noticed is the bloody regrowth, the bloody spindly, crappy,
Mm,
bloody dumb
yeah,
stuff
it's
that
not just the
the
rainforest that
cattle
bounces
can't
back,
get
but
through. The cattle can't move through it to graze. And the thing is, they're all fighting each other for competition to get a bit of moisture or nutrients. Where if it was managed, you would take 90% of that out, and the other 10% of the trees would probably get a bit of a move on and become something decent. But until we actually enable us to manage these type of things properly, rather than sort of you can't cut down any tree whatsoever. You can't. It's unfathomable.
oh look, it's you know we we have to wake up, and there's just been too many people come here to North Queensland that have obviously had it pretty easy, and they've got no idea about how this natural environment regenerates, the cycles over decades and longer. You know, all this raving on about the climate's changing and the sea level's rising. Well, the reality is that the sea level at the Esplanade in Cairns is in the same spot it was when I was a kid. It hasn't moved a millimeter. I don't know what they're talking about. Anybody who's been here and seen that long can see that the water's at the same level, and it's the same across the whole place. If we want to store carbon, if we want to keep the rainfall, the nice wet tropical rainfall that I remember as a kid, as my grandfathers remember, the best thing we can do is put timbers back in the ground, right? The best thing we can do, if carbon really is affecting, and it could be having an effect on the climate, is to get as many of these timber trees in the ground as possible, especially around the Wet Tropics World Heritage Area, like a buffer zone. But it would also, where we're using native species, extend the area of habitable habitat for the native animals. We'd be providing extra habitat, okay? And we should be thinking like that. We should be thinking we can play an active role in the management of this place to boost the economy. I mean, if we had an agroforestry and ecoforestry industry here in North Queensland, and we did it properly, it would be so much more valuable to the economy than tourism. It would leave it for dead, okay? And imagine the jobs, man. Imagine the traineeships for young people in horticulture, planting the trees. We need nurseries to get the young seedlings up. We would need young blokes in arboriculture, tree lopping to maintain the trees. There'd be that much employment and training in it. It's ridiculous. All of these young people that are sort of looking for work, looking for a future. We're talking thousands and thousands of jobs. We're talking thousands of hectares of extra habitat. We're talking ridiculous amounts of money for the state and for the people in revenue. And we're talking ridiculous amounts of carbon stored in the forests that we would add. So what are we doing? We have to snap out of this extreme mentality that the left is putting out there and start thinking realistically and thinking with common sense and just forget about all this woke crap, okay? We're not managing this place the right way. We need to bring back common sense.
But once you've got the managed forests and you're planting new, it also gives you an opportunity to have a program to harvest safe 0.5 of 1% or 1% per annum and basically do no harm. And
it would be
one of the big things is,
Definitely.
All right, you've captured that carbon, but now you take it away and you turn it into something, into a building. That's locking it away for 100 odd years.
Exactly.
Like if you go to Europe, you go to Munich, for instance. You can go anywhere in the active area of Munich and go into buildings that were built, in 1385 schools, and those same timbers that are holding up that place were felled, 800 odd years ago.
That is such a good point. These extreme conservationists seem to think that when you cut down a tree, all the carbon gets out. That's not what happens, man. The carbon is locked in that wood, okay? Unless you burn it or something, then it'll get out. But as you just said, I mean, once you have the carbon in that tree, in that wood, you've got it. Cut it down and let more grow up and let more carbon get stored. It's crazy. I think we've lost common sense in this country. And I think that the woke movement is actually like a cult, and it's, they're brainwashing children from kindergarten in this stuff. And we need to snap out of it. We just need to snap out of it and get back to some proper science and just, get the timber trees in. North Queensland was once one of the great producers of the world's great cabinet woods and hardwoods. That's what this place is really about. It was almost the founding industry, that and gold. This place could be the timber mecca of the world if we got organised, and it's time to start thinking about it.
I think the other strange things is, even for people in Brisbane and things like that, they've got all these rules that you can't cut down a tree and all this thing. And
oh man, God.
And then you see after every storm, some 60-foot, giant gum tree has come down over a house.
They realise, that pine tree might fall on us. Quick, cut it down.
When you see them when it's fallen, you see the root system on it. It's almost non-existent. It's basically rotted away, so it was not holding there. And when they chop it up, half of it's hollow, so it's no good. Can people not get it through their head that trees have a useful life expectancy, and after they hit a certain age, they're really starting to decompose anyway. So you need to harvest them before they start hollow in the middle and stuff like that. Yes, you need some old trees to fall on the ground to be roosts for birds
and you need,
that sort of thing. But they don't need the whole forest to do that.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, you're right. You're damn right. And I think that's where ecologists should be working with foresters. It's just simply a matter of going through and going, okay, that big syzygium, that big water gum, look at it. Look at the hollows in that tree. Okay, let's have a good look at it. There's possums nesting in there. There's striped possums, there's grease possums, there's whatever. There's tree kangaroos eating the fruit. Let's put a H on that tree for habitat. That's it, right? And we just need to go through. Hey?
That's not a new concept. Foresters have been doing that since.
They've been doing that ever since forestry existed. And I think, we just got to the point where I've spoken to some of these scientists from JCU and they go, but once you take that tree out, you've taken something out of that forest. I mean, for God's sake, man, what is wrong with these people, man? You know, they have, honestly, this green movement that went into North Queensland 30, 40 years ago, they have done so much damage and they take no responsibility for what they've done. The families that were destroyed with the creation of the wet tropics, you know, the families that were just left with nothing, that broke up, they're responsible for it. And there were so many people in the timber industry who killed themselves, right? Even up until recent years. Only less than 10 years ago, there was a guy running the mill in Gordonvale. He just couldn't pay the bills. He put his head over the circular saw and killed himself. These greenies and all these extreme leftists caused this, and they don't give a hoot. They don't give a hoot what damage they did to communities like Ravenshoe and other places. It's absolutely disgusting. It's time for them to realise that there are other people here that have much longer connections to the place than they do, that have a right to have a say again in what happens here.
I think one of the biggest problems you find for a lot of coastal Australia, away from the capital cities like Cairns and that, is people have fled the big cities to get away from the hustle and bustle. So they've come to places like Cairns and then down on the south coast of New South Wales and that. And what they want is basically for time to stand still in those locations. Like no development. We don't want any tall buildings. We want all the services of a modern society. We want public transport, but we're not prepared to sort of develop so you can accommodate a new population or that. And then also at the same time, they're choking industry out of the question. So people who've got family and raising kids here who need the jobs and that aren't going to get them. Whereas those people who came here, they've basically finished their reproductive life.
They don't care.
Dumped themselves.
They come with their money from their house they sold. Yeah.
And they just want it to stay the same. That's not how the system should work. We should be also looking forward to developing in northern and far north Queensland, especially our inland areas, especially for the communities that are already out there and that need development and industry to further and improve their lives.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people who've come here and it's like their great achievement in life. They come to North Queensland to save the rainforests. They all get into these cliquey little organisations. They've sold everything from down south and they get, quite a lot for their house or whatever they set up here. They think they're big time. They think they're saving the planet. Well, all they're doing is wrecking the place, And if they really cared about the rainforests, as I said to you, these rainforests were set aside in 1920, over 100 years ago. If they really cared, they would be going to places like the Amazon or the middle of Borneo, the Congo, and really fighting and helping to protect the rainforest. It doesn't need saving here anymore. It's saved already. Okay. And we've got all these people here. It's like their pet project, how they're going to save the planet by moving to North Queensland. And really, let's face it, the atmosphere of Cairns, the crime situation, the socioeconomic, it's all gone to hell since this wave of leftists moved here. They've wrecked the place. It's
I
as
think
simple
that's
as that.
probably the sentiment of a lot of 4 and 5 generation people who from Cairns that hasn't gone forward as much. I saw a video from 1987 where we had a fair bit of development. We had a robust fishing industry. We had
did, yeah. The
local
fishing industry, gee,
shipbuilders.
they've copped it. Sorry.
Local shipbuilders and that families development in the area. And the interesting thing was that they raised a lot of that capital through their own,
Yeah. They had
sources
to get
and
up
that.
and go, and they
And they
did it
weren't
themselves,
waiting
mate.
for the government to come and give them
Exactly.
money. But now nothing moves forward unless, all right, we will do this project, or we will build something, or we'll create this interest, provided you give us a bucket of taxpayer money. And I think that's fairly constant right around Australia now, is that nothing gets done unless we can get some
freebies.
freebies or subsidies from the government, and it's sort of disconnected everyone from community and things like that. But going forward with this election, besides the agriculture and that in the Cape up there, what other issues are you and through the Katter Party sort of looking into in regards to this election?
Well, this Cape Development Road, look, for God's sake, just tar it, Again, it's all these extreme leftists who think it's really cool for the environment. Actually, it's better to tar it. There won't be as much dirt runoff from these stupid drainage things they put in on the sides of dirt roads. I mean, tar the damn thing, and it'll be better for the locals. All this left group of thinking is, it's really good for tourism. All the crazy four drivers from down south go through. What about the locals, man? The best thing to do is just seal that road. And it's not just there. Look at the road coming down from Kuranda to Smithfield. What an absolute joke. That is such an embarrassment. It's been going on the entire time the road has been there. It's just a mess. I mean, there's only one thing to do: put a tunnel through. Put it through Kuranda to Smithfield in 5 minutes. And what about the benefit to the agricultural producers on the tablelands? It will make life so much easier. Bang, they can just, down it goes in a truck in 5 minutes. Let's stop mucking around. Again, let's just fix that up, fix the roads, fix that Peninsula Development Road up, put a tunnel through from Kuranda down to Smithfield, and now stop stuffing around, worrying about the tourists might think it's cooler if there's a greater four-wheel drive adventure. Let's start putting the locals first, all right? Because, the problem is that this leftist green movement put all their eggs in the tourism basket. It's just dumb, man. It's just so dumb. Haven't they ever heard the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket? They think they're really smart, all these so-called environmentalists and the university, which has basically been breeding them, they breed them in that James Cook University. If you don't go along with their extreme leftist stuff, mate, you get harassed, you get bastardized, and you get booted out. You get less marks, you get less help, and you get made out to be the biggest bastard on earth. So we've got to snap out of this, start putting the locals first, and stop thinking that tourism is the one and only, it's not the only thing we can do here. So that's a big step in the right direction if we realise that.
It's great for jobs if you want to be a barista or a bag carrier.
Yeah. I mean,
it's not a real high-skilled industry, and it's not a very well-paid industry yet.
And it's seasonal. It just dies. And look at Look at Palm Clove now. It just dies. In the wet season.
Mm.
It pretty much just goes. It'll start to kick up now. The winter's coming on, but for half the year, a lot of these places, there is no tourism. There is no tourist industry. Is that stupid or what, man? You know, I don't know. To me, it's common sense, but I think that again, it comes back to these extreme environmentalists who are thinking we've got to protect this place no matter what. So they chose the tourism industry. They thought that was the cool way to sort of say, oh, we're still making money out of this place. Well, actually, yeah, sort of. And
provided you're getting gifts from government.
It's provided you're one of the ones who owns one of the tourist companies or so forth, or you know. And again, a lot of it only goes for half the year. So I think stop thinking like that. Let's open our mind a bit further and start thinking about land-based industries. The other thing that I agree with the Katter Party completely is this crime situation is a joke. I mean, seriously, man. Again, all of this has come with the coming of all these extreme leftists. They are directly responsible for this crime mess, all this softly crap they go on with. What do you think the Crims have been thinking as this has just got worse and worse over 3 or 4 decades? They've just been going, oh, I can get away with it. Oh, I'll just get a slap on the wrist. It's time to bring in castle law. If someone comes into your house, man, come on, it's your home. What if you've got 2 little kids in your house? You have every right. It is a basic human right to lay into that person and boot them outside on the street. And you should not get charged. The Katter Party is right. Castle law has to come in. If we have to make a new state in North Queensland to bring that in, so be it. This business, if you've got to be careful that you might hurt someone, I mean, come on, man. It is, again, a product of the extreme left garbage. And they are responsible. They are responsible for this crime problem. Absolutely.
I think that's something that's been going on for decades, or if not
it has built up. But think about how long. When did all this extreme leftist stuff start? Exactly the same time, mate. You have a look at it. There is a correlation there, mate.
I'd say it started probably in about 1987 when
there you go.
Number 2 child came home from school and told her mother, I don't have to do as you tell me. I've got rights.
You just hit the nail on the head, mate.
And it's just festered from there.
And you know what? I have to agree with Bob, and there are a lot of people around Cairns who agree with me that bush sentencing, you know, all these idiots, crackheads, the whole lot of them, you get a choice. You go on in the clink or you go out to that farm and sweat it out and you work and you get made to learn bush skills. You start to learn about the real North Queensland bush again. You made defence, shoe horses, fix saddles, the whole lot. Bush sentencing has to come in because we don't have so many of these people that are running around Cairns causing trouble. They've had no bush education. All they know is these ridiculous streets and all this woke crap that's fed to them. We have to bring in bush sentencing. Absolutely, Bob Katter is right. You can say whatever you want to say about him, but mate, he's hit the nail on the head. Those troublemakers have to go out cold turkey, no drugs, no beer, no nothing out on that bush sentencing and sweat it out, man. It'll be the best thing for them. And that leads me to another point, but I think you've got some more questions. There's a really good point I want to make about that before the end of this.
Oh, just, yeah.
Well, basically, yeah, there has to be some form of national service. I mean, it's the big thing that has led to the degeneration of Australian society. There's no initiation anymore. Even the blackfellas had initiations for their young men as they went through, and the women too, girls too. And we need to bring back, even if it's just a couple of months or 6 months, probably at the end of year 10, we need national service to bring some pride back into this country, to snap these young people into the real world, okay, and to make them know how to defend this, to make them useful should we get invaded. Okay, if that means we have to make a new state in North Queensland and have it just in North Queensland, so be it. But without national service, we are headed to woke wonderland, mate.
I think one of
Absolutely. No
I
doubt.
was I
No
was a
doubt in my mind.
I was a product of the apprentice scheme, the military apprentice scheme. If you go back to, I think it started off in the 50s actually. Um, Kids from all over Australia, rural areas and that. That was one of their big opportunities to go into the
Learn
service
some
at
good skill.
15. You could go in, do apprentice, and there was a whole heap of different categories, from electronics to electrical to diesel mechanics, motor mechanics, and even at one stage there was carpentry and things like that, because both the Army and the Air Force had their construction units where they actually went and built airfields or whatever else. So they had all those trades. And I think that was a good opportunity for young people, especially in rural areas, to have that opportunity, get some hands-on work, have a trade, and then
Yeah, yeah,
I,
get
I
some
think we,
a
I
trade.
think the military would have probably, because the Army, Navy, and Air Force had apprentice schemes, and I was in one course, and we started off with about 70. It whittled away over time, of course, but there was so the Air Force had 70 in each of the different courses, and there were probably about 8 or 9 different trades. So
Mhm.
you're talking about 500 kids per year just in the Air Force. The
Yeah,
same
getting
for the
skilled
Army
up.
and Navy. That's a lot of youth going through the system, and it's mutually beneficial. You get an education, you get a trade, and the country gets something out of you. And if you stay on, that's fine and good. If you just do the minimum 6 years, well, that's fine as well. So there's all different schemes that are available to sort of
Yeah,
look at this sort of
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly, man. And
So
we get skilled people. They are getting something happening in their life instead of wandering the streets of Cairns. And we also get backup soldiers. Should something bad happen, we've got people in know at least something about how to fight for our country.
yeah,
You know,
we don't need everyone to go to university and get an arts degree anyway. That's for sure.
exactly. And that's man, we're just going so far in the wrong direction. Really, we're sitting ducks right now, and you know, you've only got to look at lately the Chinese circumnavigating us with spy ships and having live fire drills out in the Tasman Sea. It's not rocket science to work out, is it?
I think that's one of the interesting things about this election is, and it's been the form for decades probably, is when it comes to election, it's all about buying people's vote, with and this is the federal and state governments elections. They start talking about, take for instance, one of the big topics around here is getting the federal government to stump up $40 million to get the Cowboys women's team up here. That is not a federal government's remit.
Yeah,
We as talking with the federal
exactly.
government and electing people of the federal government, you should be talking about defence,
Yeah, you're
biosecurity,
damn right.
immigration, not these sort of, let's get a toilet block for up here, a
Yeah,
walking
yeah.
track over
Well,
here. That's not the issue. We should be electing people who are going into the parliament to make sure those things that are the federal government's responsibility are forefront in their mind. And that goes for debts and immigration. And I'm sure the Catters are not real big fans of immigration of 500,000 people a year.
well, look, again, that's not rocket science. You don't even have to have a PhD in ecology to know that that's bad for the ecology. It's not sustainable, man. And people are going on about these same people that are going on about the environment are saying we need to bring more people in. I mean, they are stupid, man. They are so brainwashed that they can't even see basic reality anymore. We cannot keep bringing this amount of people in. This place can't sustain that. We can't sustain the people we've got now. We're going to have to come up with some really good solutions just to feed and house the people we've got now. But hey, how does the Labor Party prop up the economy and make it look okay? They just keep bringing the immigrants in. And you're so right, Bill. They just want votes. They don't care about the long-term future of this country. There's only one thing they're interested in: getting votes, and they'll get it. And I've seen it in this election. I've seen the way they behave. They'll do anything.
And the
to get
Liberals are
to
not much
get
better.
votes out of people, and anything to stop other parties from getting votes.
Yeah, the Liberal Party is not that much better either in regards to a lot of these policies. There's
Yeah,
only a
it's not
20%
just
variation
the
in the
Labor that
numbers.
do it.
That's about it.
That's true.
But
Yeah,
the other thing is you hit a thing there about we can't sustain the bigger population.
we
Well,
can't.
that's probably not true if we actually built the infrastructure, but we've got all these policies that say we don't want to build a dam. We want to cut our farmers out. We want to stop them having water allocation to grow things. So, of course, you'll never be able to sustain your own population if you're not going to build another dam or you're not going to allow farmers to do their job. So that's a real problem. Until we change the focus in regards to
I understand what you're
regional
saying. Yeah,
development,
yeah, yeah. I
without
totally
regional
agree.
development, we're going to go
And
backwards.
there's there's a lot of merit in the well, obviously water is so key. Um, but I think, yeah, and I agree. In certain places, you could have, especially in North Queensland, it would make sense to put a dam in an area that's not so. Again, use your brains. Like, don't put it in the Pioneer Valley up the back of Mackay, which is really good farmland for starters, high biodiversity. Don't put it in those places. Let's find some place where there's not much going on ecologically, but there's still a lot of rainwater in the headwaters of that catchment. And let's store a lot of water there and from the wet season, and let's send it down into central Queensland. Let's pipe it around the place to help those guys out. We just have to be very smart about it. Obviously, we don't dam the Johnston River and flood all that really good agricultural land behind Innisfail. Let's be smart about it, and we could do a few good things there, especially in North Queensland, similar to the Bradfield scheme. But the reality is there's a lot of people in this place now that it's going to take a lot of work to feed and house them all. We're already on the edge. At this point, I think we just need to I honestly think there should be only essential immigration. We're just that overloaded, it's ridiculous. And I'm talking
In
both
Northern
from
Australia,
I'm
yeah.
I'm talking both as an ecologist and a land manager. Yeah, absolutely agree. In the right spot, we can put some dams that can really benefit the place. But the problem is now there's a lot of people in this country for a country that's never been a home to a lot of people. All right. This place does not have a high holding capacity. That's just the reality.
I think one of the interesting things about Northern Australia is the high rainfall and the sparse population. And I think the Ord River does show a proof of concept
Yeah,
in
that was
regards to
smart. That was pretty good,
water
man.
holding.
It's good.
The one thing that comes out of that, I mean, a lot of people called it a white elephant, but there was a big learning curve about starting to farm in the tropics and things like that. And also, we didn't have if we had to put a lot of Vietnamese boat people in there in the first place, we probably would have done a lot better, a lot quicker because they would have been more adjusted to it, had a bit of the small farming. But what that's proved is both the whole landmass benefits because with the Argyle Dam and the dam 55 kilometres, the irrigation dam 55 kilometres, that area is at a constant level. Between those two
It's an
dams,
amazing deal. I've been there.
and
Blown
so
away.
what's happened? They've also fed that water off to wetlands. So where you used to have Russian dust sort of thing, what I call it, with our wet seasons and our
Like near
dry seasons.
Kununurra, yeah.
We had wetlands, but they were temporary because it didn't take that long for them to dry out. But with that concept, they established permanent wetlands. Now, of course, they've only sort of looked at. It's easy to look at bird life, but what's happened is there's a greater. Not only is there a greater number of birds in the area and through those wetlands, but there's actually more species than what that were originally there because a lot of the migrating birds actually started to set up permanently there because the water was constant. So it's shown that. And I suppose if you went around and actually went and had a look at all the little different animals that are in the grass and things like that, you'd probably find a lot more of an ecosystem than also with plants. But that's a proof of concept about holding at least some water on the land, for irrigation, and then a good proportion of it still goes out to, I think it's Derby's, the township that further downstream. So those
Yeah.
sort of concepts up here, just holding water and pooling it for and controlling it for stuff will give you wetlands, will give you ability to have irrigation. But those permanent, you can have permanent wetlands that
The
are
wildlife
much
will
better
love it.
for
Yeah,
biodiversity. You don't have to
absolutely.
send all the water down to South Australia. We can use it too.
Exactly. I mean, I do agree that, um, like I said, yeah, in the right spot, that was pretty smart, the Ord River's irrigation scheme. It's just a matter of being smart about it. Like, obviously you wouldn't dam the Daintree River and wipe out rainforest and great farmland along the river. It's just to be smart about it. And there's great benefits for the people and the wildlife. Yeah, wherever there's a big permanent pool of water. And also, the the situation with all the or great majority of the people being squeezed into cities on the East Coast, we could take a bit of pressure off that and maybe have people coming out into new cities out in the interior, you know?
Only we get to choose.
Yeah, obviously a lot of people living out in the bush probably would like who comes, yeah. I bet, it's yeah, good point. But I just think that, this is why we need to just put a bit of a hold on immigration because we're right on the edge as it is. Far out, man. If you've ever been to the big cities lately, what a change from when we were kids, They were big country towns when we were kids. Now it's just madness. And so, look, let's sort out some way of actually looking after all these people first before we keep going crazy with the immigration. Let's bring it back to something much more sustainable, and let's think about how we're going to actually feed and house these people in the future. The immigration rate at the moment isn't sustainable. It isn't realistic. It's just stupid. And I'm not saying that that's no insult to any race at all. I'm thinking about the future of this country. We need to halt on the immigration, work out how the hell we're going to look after all these people first.
And get our infrastructure up.
Yeah,
because
get it sorted.
It's interesting thing is more people, you need more infrastructure. But when you've got situations like Jasper went through nearly 18 months ago now, and the road to Mosman is still only half open. It's one-way traffic for sections there. The Coranda Range is still basically knocked out. So we haven't even repaired the damage that that was done, let alone talking about getting new infrastructure. So I think sometimes...
Yeah, one thing at a time. That's what you're saying, and that's what I'm saying. Yeah, one step at a time.
Don't keep flooding people in here.
Absolutely. This idea to bring 250,000 people to the south side of Cairns, you've got to be joking. Did anyone ask the people in the south side of Cairns? I mean, 250,000 people. Who came up? I think it was Anastasia Palaszczuk who first came up with that. And they're still talking about it. It is a stupid idea. We're not ready for anything like that on the south side. The hospital needs so much done to it. We don't have a hospital that's ready for this. It's already madness.
But I don't know if you remember, it was only about maybe 10 years ago. We had some sort of evacuation thing go on.
Yeah, that's true.
People tried to get out of town, and just even with the population then, it was just impossible.
Madness.
You were never going to get out if something happened. If there was a tsunami, you're not going to get through there. So you've got to build the infrastructure so you can escape in the first place. Because living on the coast, in an area that's sort of surrounded by the tectonic plates and that, where we can have a tsunami out somewhere or other. Probably not a good idea. Maybe it's a good idea to build the escape routes first and then bring the people.
Yeah, let's do one thing at a time. Yeah, one step at a time,
and do it well,
and do it in the right sequence, and do it well, and do it in the right sequence. Yeah.
Look, we've gone over the hour, but just before we wrap up, can you tell us a bit about your business Might as well give that a bit of a plug as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot
In
going
regards
on,
to
but I've
doing
still,
what you do in your day job, sort of thing.
well, there's a lot going on in the environmental business that I have, Cora Culture Environmental. I have projects all around the world, from the middle of Africa to the Amazon and Papua New Guinea and other places. So basically looked at the areas that I was most concerned about, and I went there and I got into it. And now, as I said before, the group that I work with in the Amazon have over 320,000 hectares protected in the most biodiverse area on the border of Peru, Brazil, and Bolivia. So I hope to go. I will be going back because I want to just do everything I can to help there. And there's other projects like that in New Guinea and Borneo and in Central Africa, Sumatra, other places. So that's been going on really ever since I got my degree. I started doing stuff like that, and about half a dozen years ago, it became a proper business. But I've also, along the way, got involved in other stuff like the African Refugee Council, because you think we've got problems here, mate. We should be able to fix these problems if people use some common sense. That's what makes it so ridiculous what's going on here. We don't have half the problems they have in the middle of Africa, and we're still making stupid mistakes. So there's a lot to be learned from the experiences I have and the work that I do. And unfortunately, the problem is I just don't get the exposure on the media that, say, the Liberal and Labor people candidates do. Even the Greens get more exposure than I do, and I've got greater ecological training and experience than anybody in the Greens Party. That's what blows my mind. But yeah, I will still continue to do this work. Obviously, if I win, it's possible. It'll be scaled back a bit, and I'll concentrate on Leichhardt, definitely. Otherwise, I'm continuing on expanding the reserves in South America, in the Amazon, the work elsewhere, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, African Refugees Council sort of thing. People might not have I did have a bit of a look at it, but it's basically involves looking after African refugees in their situ where they are, sort of thing. But
Yeah,
maybe outside the country that's in turmoil, but in that locale, it's not sort of bringing them to
sorry.
Australia. Because I think one of the most interesting things is we
Sorry.
we for for the cost of we bring refugees into this country, and it costs us X amount of dollars to do all the bits and pieces. But we could provide aid and assistance
Exactly.
to many more people in the
In their
adjacent
place, it's
countries.
cheaper
Like,
to look after them there. Way
yeah,
cheaper. Way more, it's more feasible and economical, if that's what you're saying. We can help them much better there than bringing them here. Is that what you're
but
saying?
it's not only just for them, but it's also their host country. It's beneficial. Like I can see,
Yeah,
like Kenya is probably it's a big place where people from Somalia and Ethiopia and other war countries go to because it's reasonably stable. But you can service a huge number of people there, but it also adds to the economy of Kenya at the same time.
absolutely, man.
So this is
Absolutely.
what people don't get. We don't have to spend all this
Yeah,
money on bringing people here.
to
We
help
can
these
we can
people, the
do
answer
a
is not
thousand
always
times
to bring
better
them
over
here.
there.
Exactly, man. Totally. You absolutely read my mind. You know, there's again, it's this green leftist mentality that, oh, we've got to bring them here and look after them. Well, it isn't exactly working out for a lot of them. You've been to Melbourne lately, the best thing we can do is help them there in their place. Absolutely.
And lot
Absolutely.
more of them, and the hosting
Yeah.
countries as well.
And their countries will benefit. You absolutely nailed it, Bill.
And when the
Absolutely.
situation changes, they can go back to their homeland and re-establish there.
Yeah, they should, I reckon. I mean, unless they've got some really valid reason to be here. I mean, if they really care about their place and their culture, yeah, it makes sense to go home, doesn't it?
Yep.
You know?
Okay, look, we've gone over the hour, well and truly. Yeah, I'll just let you wrap up on a final note in regards to this campaign and It's over in 3 days.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt there's a lot of people voting for me, and it is a chance that I could win. But again, you're just up against it when everything's rigged towards the bigger parties. You know, they're getting all the exposure, they've got more money, more people, more volunteers, more everything. But I say to people when I talk to them at the booths, I say, look at it. I mean, who's better qualified to run Leichhardt? There's no question that I have. Look at who I'm up against. An ex-basketballer. What on earth has that got to do with running a seat like this? I mean, they just haven't got a clue. The other candidates. I've got to be honest. Even the Greens candidate has no qualifications at all in ecology or conservation. He's a civil engineer or something. So that none of them have. I mean, if it was a job application, I would win by 5 kilometers. But unfortunately, it's not. It's more of a popularity contest, and you know, it's so dirty. What I've seen is a very dirty campaign, and sadly, you know, you just unfortunately, the exposure I've got tonight, I needed more of this everywhere, but that's sort of reserved for the big parties, unfortunately.
And I think the big thing is too, Leichhardt, big area. Right, we've got a couple of main towns and that, but the bulk of the area is open space that provides potential for the future in regards to agriculture, forestry, and all those sort of things, which is a much broader industry than just sitting around the sites of Cairns and that in regards to tourism
Yeah,
and that. And I tell you, Cairns isn't that pretty, I'm afraid.
mud flat city, you know, and the biggest problem too is that 80% of the electorate are in Cairns, and where are all the new people in Cairns? Where are all the woke people in Cairns? So it's a little bit unfair for the rural people and the people living up on the Cape because there's such a small percentage of the population. And look, but they are the majority of the landscape, the history, the culture, blackfella and whitefella culture, and
And
other
the
people.
opportunity.
Yeah, and the real future of the place, but they just don't get the say that the people in Cairns do, and it's really sad because most of those people that live out in the rural areas have got a long ancestry in North Queensland, go back hundreds and thousands of years, and they just don't have the say in the place that all these new people do.
Okay, then, Daniel, we'll leave it there. Wish you all the best in the election, and we'll catch up later. If you could just stay online for a sec, I'll just introduce next week's show and have a quick talk with you offline.
No
So
worries,
thank
mate.
you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, if you'd like tonight's show, please like and subscribe to our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. My guest next week will be Anthony Dillon. He's an Indigenous commentator, and he'll be talking about moving forward with things and how we improve relations after the voice. So please join me next week. Thank you.